Welcome back to another lesson on the GCSE Chemistry Paper 2 topic, Chemistry of the Atmosphere, and in this lesson we're going to look at how carbon dioxide levels decreased. Before we start, some top tips for getting the most out of this lesson. Do not have any web pages or windows open that will distract you. Answer all of the questions, they will help to make sure you understand the new content. Switch off your phone, or at least have it in a different room, it's the biggest distraction you've got. And finally, try to complete the lesson in one session. It will really help you to understand what has been covered. The plan for this lesson? As always, we will start with some retrieval practice. We know we need to go over previous topics to make sure we don't forget anything. We'll have a look at the new content of how carbon dioxide levels decreased. You'll have some time to embed the new content before it's your chance to have a go and develop your understanding with some practice work. What you're going to need is a mini whiteboard or a pen and some paper, possibly some revision cards for the retrieval practice, an exercise book or a notepad to write down the new content, a mini whiteboard, pen and paper, or someone who can quiz you for the embedding, and an exercise book or notepad again for the practice work. Pause the video and get yourself organised. Let's start with some retrieval practice. First retrieval slide, pause the video and answer the questions on some paper or a mini whiteboard. Here are the answers. Any that you couldn't answer or weren't sure about, you should write down on revision cards or in a notebook so you can go back over them later. Pause the video and do that now. Second retrieval slide, pause the video and give these questions a go. Here are the answers. Make sure you pause and write down any that you weren't sure about. And the final retrieval slide is to help you remember what was covered in the previous lesson. Pause and have a go. Again, here are the answers. Pause and write down the ones you struggled with. On to the new content. You will need an exercise book or notepad so you can write down the questions and answers as they appear on the screen. You will need these for the embedding part of the lesson later on. Pause and get yourself organised. What caused the percentage of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere to decrease? There are 5 you need to know. Photosynthesis by algae and plants. Dissolved in oceans and carbonates were precipitated, producing sediments. Formation in sedimentary rocks, such as limestone. As marine animals evolved, their shells and skeletons contained carbonates from the oceans and locked up in fossil fuels which contain carbon, for example, crude oil and natural gas. You need to be able to explain how limestone, coal, crude oil and natural gas are formed. So we're going to do this by using flowcharts. And all you need to do is copy down the text and drawings that I add to each of the boxes to your own versions as I go through it. So starting off with explaining how limestone is formed. Limestone is made from calcium carbonate. And that is the chemical formula CaCO3. So if you look at a piece of limestone, and you zoom in on a tiny little part, you're going to see that it's made up of lots of CaCO3, calcium carbonate molecules. As we know, marine organisms make their shells and skeletons from calcium carbonate, and when they die, they sink to the bottom of the ocean. So we've got the seabed, and then we've got some sort of marine organism. Okay, some sort of ancient shellfish type creature. Over time, that's going to get buried under layers of sediment. So here's our marine organism. And layer upon layer of sediment builds up. Over millions of years, everything gets compressed. So those layers get closer and closer together, and it squashes it under huge amounts of pressure. And what that does is it forms limestone. So we're back to our block that if we look at under a microscope, we'd see the calcium carbonate molecules. So now let's explain how coal is formed. So again, we're going to use a flowchart. So coal is a sedimentary rock. And it's made from thick plant deposits. And what we mean by thick plant deposits are giant ferns and giant plants. So what happens? These giant plants and ferns will die, and they form layers at the bottom of swamps. So there's our swamp, and at the bottom we've got all of our ferns and giant plants. Building up many layers. Layers of sediment then build up over those plants. There's our layers of sediment building up over the plants. Because of all those layers of sediment, you get high temperature and high pressure, and that causes chemical and physical changes. And this happens over millions of years. There's our high pressure. And there's our high temperature. And what this does, it forms coal. And then the coal is found in the ground and we can dig it up. So now let's explain how crude oil and natural gas are formed. So crude oil and natural gas are made from deposits of plankton. Now plankton are tiny sea creatures that just float around on the currents. The plankton will die and then they fall to the seabed. There's our seabed, and here's all the plankton. The plankton then get covered in layers of mud. So there's our seabed, all our plankton, and then layers and layers of mud. High temperatures and pressure cause chemical and physical changes over millions of years. So a bit like coal. So high pressure and high temperature. And this forms crude oil and or natural gas. So oil or gas. Now it's your chance to embed those key concepts. You can use the look, cover, write, check method, or get someone to ask you the questions and you can tell them the answers. Pause the video and do this now. Now it's time for you to practice using the concepts we have covered in today's lesson. Pause the video and open your exercise book or notepad. Here are 5 questions to get you to apply the concepts you now know. Pause the video and give them a go. Here are the answers to the first 3 questions. Pause the video and check your answers. And here are the answers to the last 2 questions. Again, pause the video and check your work. That's all for this lesson. Make sure you go back over all the concepts from this lesson, including the retrieval practice, in order to develop your long-term memory. And I will see you next time.